Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Star Wars Jedi Survivor. This is the sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I loved the first game, so I was really excited to get my hands on this one for the PlayStation 5. These games take place after Order 66, where basically the Empire murdered all of the Jedi. Obviously, they didn't get to all of them, but the majority of Jedi were murdered. But it takes place before Star Wars 4, with the events of Luke and Obi-Wan. This game also takes place a decent amount of time after Jedi Fallen Order, where our main character, Cal Kestis, is older and wiser, more adept at using the Force and his lightsaber, and the group of people that he hung out with in the first game have went separate ways, and he's kind of a loner, but he's still fighting the good fight against the Empire. Plot-wise, a lot happens here, but essentially we're just trying to find a safe haven away from the Empire on a mysterious planet called Tanalorr, but it's really hard to get to because it's behind this giant abyss vortex thingy. But there's all the typical things you would expect out of a Star Wars story. There's the struggle with the dark side, there's friendships and betrayals and lightsabers and all that good stuff. I really like the characters in this game. There's a lot, and I especially like our main character, our main protagonist, Cal Kestis. He seems like a very relatable character, and I think he does make a good protagonist. Ultimately, the best character, though, is his little robot companion, BD1, who is very cute, and he serves a lot of purposes in which the main one being that he provides Cal with stim packs, which are basically like health potions. When you're low on health, he'll give you a stim pack. And at the beginning of the game, you have a very limited amount of stim packs, and as you play through the game and explore all these hidden areas, you can progressively unlock more and more stim packs to have readily available to you. Now, BD1 also serves a lot of different purposes as well, where he can scan a bunch of different unique objects, points of interest for experience and lore. I don't really care much about the lore side of things, but he does give you experience. He kind of acts as like a little zip line thing where Cal holds on to BD1 and he zip lines across areas. He can also slice enemy robots to turn them into your friend, and then he can also just like hack into computers and stuff to open doors, that kind of thing. Functionally, I mean, you need BD1, but also he's just like that cute little mascot character. The closest way to describe the combat would be a Souls-like. However, it is not nearly as difficult as a real Souls game. But it takes a lot of inspiration from that genre, in where, like, instead of bonfires, you have these meditation points, and that's where all of your stim packs refill. That's where you can spend skill points and fast travel, all that kind of thing. And if you die, then you respawn at that meditation point. And then you have to go and basically defeat the enemy that killed you in order to like regain all of the experience points that you lost. Not to mention, if you do decide to heal up at one of these meditation points and regain all of your stim packs, then all the enemies that you have defeated respawn. It also takes a lot of inspiration from the Souls-like genre, in which you, as you progress through these areas, you unlock different shortcuts, so you don't need to make your way all the way back to where you were if you do die. If you unlocked a shortcut, you can potentially bypass a lot of these enemies to get back to where you were. Combat isn't as brainless as a normal hack and slashy kind of game. You can't just spam the attack button over and over again. You actually need to think about timing and pacing of when you want to swing your lightsaber, when you need to block. You have a stamina meter, so you can't just block all the time. I do feel like it's very generous with its parry windows, and maybe that's just because I had recently come off of playing God of War Ragnarok, so I got pretty good at timing those parry windows, but it's pretty generous there, and so I never really felt like I ran out of stamina, and I was pretty good at parrying enemies' attacks, destroying their stamina, so then I could get some good hits in. But I didn't really struggle with this one as much as I struggled when I played Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I think that's just because as time has gone gone on and I played more games that have similar combat like this, I've gotten more used to that kind of mindset in which I can't just keep pressing that attack button. You actually have to like think about that timing and those kind of things. In this game, you get 5 different stances. Yes, 5. And the stances are basically like how you want to wield your lightsaber, and it controls your basic attacks and like what kind of upgrades you have available to you. The main one that I use was actually pretty cool. It's new to this game, and you can hold a lightsaber in one hand and a blaster in the other. And I know it's controversial for the Jedi to use blasters. They typically just like to stick with their lightsabers, but this game is all about kind of Cal coming into realization that like, hey, the real Jedi are gone, and so there can be some exceptions here. Like he can love and he can use blasters. So that was really nice, in which I could potentially knock away some enemies' health or stamina by launching some good blasts at them from a distance away without having to worry about getting hit by myself. And then whenever you're like out of ammo, you go up and you get a couple good lightsaber hits to regain your blaster ammo from there. You can also have like 2 stances equipped at one time, and so the other one that I had equipped was the typical double lightsaber, where I have a lightsaber going at both sides, and this is typically used when there's just like a bunch of little weak enemies, because the blaster and lightsaber is good at like focusing in on one guy, but when you have a bunch of little annoying pests, that's when you whip out the double lightsaber and spin it all around you. In addition to this, the 3 other stances are you can just have like a single lightsaber. There's one where you have 2 single lightsabers, like one in each hand, and then one is almost like you have like a lightsaber claymore. I only played around with this one for a little bit because I didn't like how slow it was, but the idea is like you swing slow but you hit very hard. So yeah, the game is difficult, but not frustratingly so, at least for my tolerances. And I would die, like I definitely die, but I never felt like I was banging my head against the wall, unless I was playing around with some of the optional content, because this game has a lot of branching paths and a lot of areas that you can explore, potentially really ahead of time, because you have like this main big kind of deserty planet that you can explore. It's that this one planet plays more like an open world, and so you can potentially run into a lot of really difficult combat interactions before you're necessarily ready to do so. And so there was this one optional boss while I was just exploring this planet, and I just kept dying to this. It's like a 3-eyed frog basically, and I just kept dying to it. But I'm stubborn, you know. It's realistically, it's kind of like, well, maybe you should come back after you level up and you practice a little more with the combat. But because I'm so stubborn, I just tried over and over and over again until I finally did it, and it was very satisfying. Like that is the Souls genre feeling of the satisfaction of actually like overcoming that obstacle. But I'm glad that it only occurred once in this game, and the rest of the game was relatively manageable. In addition to your stances and upgrading these stances, you also have access to a decent amount of force powers, mostly being like you can pull enemies towards you, launch them away. So it's always fun just launching a bunch of stormtroopers off the edge and watching them tumble down. One of the force powers that I like, I always tend to choose diving into this ability whenever a game offers it, which is the ability to like mind control enemies so that they fight for you. I don't know, I always just love the idea of having like minions fight for me and do my battles for me. And so you can upgrade, like at first the first tier of this force ability isn't that great. It only lasts for like 5 seconds, have an enemy fight for you. But as you go down this upgrade tree, you can really get a powerful ally for a decent chunk of any fight, assuming they're humanoid, where you can use your force mind control and they'll fight for you. Other than that though, the upgrade trees, the skill trees weren't too exciting for me. Like they're useful for sure, but in terms of like abilities, other than like the mind control one and the different the lightsaber blaster upgrades, it wasn't like anything really exciting force-wise for me, at least in terms of like your upgrade tree. Now you do get perks. Perks are basically like passive effects, and to be honest, I didn't really play too much with optimizing my perks. Usually this is another thing that I tend to do in a lot of games. If something gives me the option to earn more XP, I always go for that. And so there's a perk that uses up all my perk slots, and it just like upgrades the amount of XP that I inherit, and that's like always the route I go in video games. And so once I unlocked that perk, I didn't try out really many of the other perks, to be honest. Now, there are a ton of cosmetics in this game. Like, you can really fine-tune exactly how you want Cal to look, his facial hair and his haircut, and like what kind of clothes he's wearing. And the lightsaber customization in this game is huge, where you can like just customize every tiny little bit of your lightsaber, what kind of colors you want it to have, even the level of polish that you want it to have. And as you explore in this game, you can unlock different parts for your lightsaber and different colors for your lightsaber. You can also customize your little robot BD1, like what kind of parts he has, what color of paint he has. And so a lot of the rewards you will typically get from exploring and going off the beaten path are these cosmetic upgrades, in addition to getting these resources that you can trade in at the town for more cosmetics. This was a huge step up from the first Star Wars Jedi game, where you just got to wear different colored ponchos. Now, the reward for defeating that really difficult three-eyed frog boss I was talking about earlier is the poncho. So that's kind of a fun reference to the first game, but in this game, the customization is like way more elaborate. You do also unlock additional abilities as you play through this game, but most are linked to traversal. So it kind of plays like a Metroidvania in that way, because you keep coming back to this really big open world desert planet, where now that you have this additional traversal ability, now you can access this new area. And there is a lot of traversal in this game. There's the wall running and the double jumping, and you get a grappling hook that can launch you to areas, and the zip line with BD1. I want to say a decent amount of this game is just like parkouring around these different planets. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gives it a nice change of pace from just combat over and over again. I will say sometimes with this traversal kind of system, it's not always clear like how you're supposed to get to the next area. You can pull up a mini map and it has a little marker like, hey, go here for your next objective. But in terms of like how I actually get there, sometimes it wasn't exactly clear. And I know a lot of people gripe about like the yellow paint, the stereotypical yellow paint in a video game that like kind of directs you to ledges that you can climb or walls you can wall run. But this game does not have it, and I kind of struggled with it. I'm just like, just give me an arrow on where I'm supposed to go, so then I know like which parts of the walls I can interact with. I miss the yellow paint. I don't care if it's not as immersive. Traversing around using the animals is pretty fun. I can't remember if this was a feature in the first Star Wars Jedi game, but you can ride like a lot of different animals, and you can grab onto these flying animals and kind of like glide down to your next destination. Not much vehicle driving. I think just only 2 situations I can think of where you're actually riding a vehicle. But this game is really like, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you want a big, meaty Star Wars game where you can put in potentially like 50 hours into it, you definitely can, especially with this big open deserty world. Lots of little caves and things that you can explore. There's like these ancient Jedi ruins that kind of work like shrines in Zelda Breath of the Wild. But if you don't necessarily want that, like for me, I'm not really looking for like a big open world experience with this type of game. You can totally just make a beeline to the main story and not feel like you are struggling because you didn't like farm experience points or anything like that. Because like I said, usually the reward for these kinds of things is cosmetics. Now you can unlock like additional force meters and health meters, but they really don't make that much of a difference with this kind of combat system. So if you just want to play this like a linear single player player game and just ignore all of the side content, I think you can comfortably do so. In addition to this, you have like a main town in this planet where like you have a saloon where you can get bounties to hunt down these enemies, and you can also have a little farm where you get these seeds and you plant them and grow things. And as you play through the game, you interact with these NPCs and direct them to your little town, and so your town gets more and more populated. And again, this is not really something that I was like interested in pursuing in this game, so I really didn't experiment much with this side town growth kind of thing, but it's there if you want it. I just love playing in this world. I love that, like, when you are sneaking up on enemy droids, like the battle droids, they kind of have this funny banter, just like straight from the prequels, which will either make you roll your eyes or you'll enjoy it depending on your age. I like how my PlayStation 5 controller makes all the little Star Wars noises out of the speaker, and the triggers feel like I'm actually pulling enemies or objects with me using the Force because it will like vibrate. Performance-wise, this game isn't 100% perfect. I've encountered many visual bugs, nothing game-breaking, and that kind of stuff really doesn't bug me too much. But if you're really looking for that like immersive experience, you might find a couple annoyances. For instance, whenever I take off on my ship called the Mantis, whenever you take off to go to a new planet, all the characters that are in the Mantis will just T-pose their default T-pose over their seats where they're supposed to be sitting for a decent amount of time, like maybe like 5 seconds before they actually like bloop and like teleport into sitting in their seats. It happened every single time. Also, whenever you see like a cinematic, all the clothes or like loose vellum fabric will just kind of like flutter a little bit before the scene settles, and that's not really a big deal. I do like that all my customization with my character and my clothes all show up in all of the cinematics. I think that's really cool, and if my clothes have to flutter a little bit with every new scene in these cinematics, if that's the trade-off, I don't mind at all. How I played it, I felt like it was a good paced game. It took me maybe like 25 hours, and that's just, I did do some side stuff. I didn't just make a beeline for the main quest every time, but 25 hours, and I felt like, yeah, that was a good length of a game. There was around the 18-hour mark, it really faked me out because it really felt like, okay, this is the end of the game. Like we are at the end, and it's like 10 p.m. at the time when I was playing through this. So it's kind of like one of those scenarios where I just felt like I had to stay up just to see it through, just to get to the credits. And so I was up until like midnight that night until I finally decided, like, this isn't the end of the game, is it? We still have a decent amount of time left in this game, and so it kind of faked me out that way. It was like another experience with The Last of Us Part 2. But overall, I had a fun time playing this game. I did have to get like reoriented with the controls. If I ever took like a 24-hour break from playing this game, I would have to spend a couple minutes like, okay, wait, how do I do this? And like, what button combo does this Force ability? And I had to like retrain myself all the time, but maybe that's just my brain getting older and not as quick and reactive as it used to be. Overall, I'm going to give this game a 5 out of 5. I thought that it was a fun Star Wars experience, and just it's an overall really great package. And the ending certainly set up a Star Wars Jedi third game, so you know that a sequel is coming, and I'm very excited for what's to come in Cal Kestis's future. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!